And now the decision of whether books or movies will ultimately come out on top comes down to which one told the better overall story. This one's actually pretty hard to decide because both stories are almost identical. The movie really does stay faithful to Harper Lee's book. The major plot points are there, the message is most definitely present, and both truly are great examples of their kind. As we said before, the major difference between these two stories is the way in which they are told, which, again, presents us with certain advantages and disadvantages for the story itself. Probably the biggest advantage for the movie is that you do feel more of an emotional attachment to the Tom Robinson story. In the book, although the Tom Robinson story is the one that most people remember, it's not necessarily the most important story. The movie puts more emphasis on this storyline, which makes the audience feel more invested in the characters and what's going on. In fact, the American Film Association actually classifies this film as a courtroom drama. The book really can't be classified that way. But the book has advantages too. This story is about understanding people who are different from you, so of course there are inherent messages there, not just with regards to race, but also with regards to class, gender, and just humanity in general. The book manages to cover all of these things. The race issues are obvious, the class issues are covered with the Cunninghams and the Ewells, and the gender issues are covered with Scout not behaving like a girl when everyone thinks that she should. The movie gives us the race and the class issues, but it kind of skimps on the gender issues. Scout is still very much a tomboy in the movie, but we don't get quite as much disapproval of her behavior or of Atticus's parenting from the neighbors. Plus, the movie eliminates characters like Aunt Alexandria, who poses the question, how should a girl or a woman act? In general, the movie kind of falls into the same trap that a lot of movie adaptations of books do. It tries to clean everything up, make everything nicer and prettier than it appears in the book. Now don't get me wrong, it's still a challenging movie, and it still faces some pretty difficult issues, but the book is a little bit more uncompromising in the way that it presents these issues and these people. Probably the best example of this is Jem, who first of all doesn't get into nearly as many fights with Scout as he does in the book, and second of all never really enters that angsty adolescent phase, which is partly why his character doesn't have as much growth in the movie. In the book, Jem is the character who grows the most. In the movie, he's not by a long shot. Admittedly, the movie cut out a lot of things in order to streamline the story, such as Jem reading to Mrs. DeBose and the kids going to Calpurna's church. But while these scenes did strengthen the message of the story, the message is still plenty strong without them. The story was not in any way weakened by the scenes that they chose to cut, and in the end, the movie still tells a really compelling story. Ultimately though, while I love both versions of the story, I think I'm gonna have to lean on the book side, and it's for this reason. The book's version of the story is completely unpretentious. Now that's not to say that the movie is pretentious, but, well, you can kind of see what I mean by how the stories are introduced. The movie starts simply enough with a description of the town and how hot it is in the summer, but it ends with the words,
"That summer I was 6 years old."
Saying that summer in that way kind of indicates that something momentous is going to happen, and that this is going to become a timeless story for you to tell your grandkids. And while that is certainly true of this story, the book's introduction is altogether different. It tells you from the beginning that this is simply the story of how Jem broke his arm. There's no momentous overtones, no indication that this is going to be anything more than a simple story from Scout's childhood, and it is in the telling of the exact circumstances that led to Jem breaking his arm that we learn of the huge scope of everything that happened. But those events are not introduced as such. We're not told about Tom Robinson's trial because it was the trial of the century and it was a huge momentous event. We're told of the trial because it's relevant to how Jem broke his arm. The movie is the story of Tom Robinson and Boo Radley, and it is introduced as such. But from a storytelling standpoint, I find a story much more compelling if the storyteller introduces it in such a straightforward way that it allows me to pass my own judgment on what's happening. And the book, in its sheer simplicity, accomplished that better than the movie. It's a narrow victory, to be sure, but in the end, I really do think that Harper Lee's original book told the better story. Now please don't take away from this that the movie is anything less than great. It is a wonderful movie. It is still among one of my all-time favorites. If you haven't seen it, please go check it out. It'll be well worth your time, and if you like Harper Lee's story, then you'll definitely like the movie. Well, the tie may be broken, but we're certainly not done with Books vs. Movies reviews. Certainly. Not with 315 suggestions on the YouTube moderator. And we'll be continuing next time with another story that is both a favorite book and a favorite movie, Frances Hodgson Burnett's A Little Princess.
Yeah, finally.
What was that, Matt?
Oh, come on, Hatter. I plugged this review months ago and we're just now getting around to doing it.
Hey, is it my fault that you jumped the gun on mentioning the review?
It's your fault that you didn't get the review done in time before the DVD had to be returned to the library.
For getting these reviews out on time.
Oh, come on,
now.
the movies are
last
your
time I checked, this was
responsibility. You
books
knew when it was
versus movies
due. You
reviews.
knew that you were going to have to return it eventually,
but
but
my
you
friends,
dragged